Welcome to the Beyond the Reef podcast, where I talk to experts and researchers in the reef aquarium hobby, discussing a broad range of topics from corals and reef biology to water chemistry and equipment. We take a deep dive into our guests' methods, techniques, and top reef keeping tips. My name is Adam Sutherland, and I am the owner-operator of Frag Garage Corals, based out of British Columbia, Canada. This episode, I am joined by Anand Kaimal, who runs Collectors Corals, which you can check out at collectorscorals.com. Anand has been in the hobby since 2008 and is based out of Oak Brook, Illinois. Anand is an absolute wizard at growing corals, and we get into a lot of his methodology, including his use of the Moonshiners system. We also talk quite a bit about feeding your corals and incorporating the use of carbon sources. Thanks to the direct support of hobbyist Bobby Heath, I'm happy to bring this podcast to you absolutely ad-free. If you want to support us, the best things you can do are like, share, write us a review, and definitely subscribe. Not enough people are hitting subscribe. And if you have any comments or questions or suggestions for future guests, please reach out. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did with Anand Kaimal of Collectors Corals. Okay, we're on. So, I actually got quite a few recommendations to talk to you from. You've been highly spoken of, so like to get into stuff with you. Maybe you can kind of give me a little kind of, I don't know, maybe background or just kind of walk me through your kind of setups and systems.
So, yeah, I started getting into the hobby back in 2008, when everybody was into super low nutrient system with Zeovit and all that stuff. And I started that way, and I was trying to achieve zero phosphate and zero nitrates, Back then that was the goal. And things worked out because you're running halides and T5s,
Yeah.
It doesn't matter any of the nutrient stuff. It just, those lights can just grow coral. So,
yeah, you think maybe those lights, just the spectrum in general, provided maybe more of what the corals needed outside of those nutrient needs? Like, do you think that the lights we're using now kind of affect the corals more in terms of the nutrient uptake, or?
I'm thinking probably the lights provided the extra push the corals needed. Maybe the LEDs are still missing, maybe something. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint, right? But that full coverage and it's funny, so I was using a tiny light mover to move my 400 watt radium. So the corals were not getting straight out focus light. So it was moving back and forth. I mean, the growth was just it exploded, in 3-4 years, the tank was full. It was, my first system was 240 gallon cube, and
yeah, that's pretty big for a first system. That's pretty most people work their way up to that.
I mean, before that it was, I had freshwater tanks, 40 gallons, all kinds of stuff. But then, I knew I'm buying all this equipment, and it's a one-time thing. And back then, so I just wanted to make sure I just do it once and I'm done for 10 years. So yeah. So everything worked out great, and then flatworms come in from Indonesia. So back in 2012, I think, my friend was getting these corals out of Indonesia, nice stuff, and who knew about flatworms? So these things came into the system.
I remember seeing them for the first time and kind of not really quite knowing what we were looking at. We'd see all these egg clutches, and some of the corals wouldn't be doing so well, but we didn't really dip corals even that much, especially back in the early 2000s. There wasn't dipping protocol. I would say maybe around 2008 was, definitely more of a standardized thing.
That's exactly.
Yeah, but I remember seeing those eggs and just being that's weird. Is that some kind of algae? I don't know. And there were so many of them. They definitely.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah, and then the colonies were just, so I had huge milli colonies, all different colors. You cannot even find them now. I had a super cream white milli, I could never get it again, and all of them just got wiped out, over the next couple of months. And then I just took out everything. Was dipping for months, every week, and was able to save some of them. And then in 2017, then I finally had to move houses, and then I had to get rid of my 240. So
Hard to move a tank
I
that size.
exactly, and it didn't fit the configuration of the new room it's going to be. So I had to get a longer tank. So I ended up getting a 375,
Nice. Okay.
8 feet, 8 feet long. But I still miss the depth of the 4 feet by 4 feet cube, but
Yeah.
but it's and then with the move, so I kind of moved all the corals into a trough over here for almost like 6-7 months. And I was running a semi normal system for almost 6-8 months, and towards the end of it, one of the water heaters broke and then killed a bunch of
Oh no.
corals. I know.
Yeah. So this was like a
So
temporary system you're saying, or this was
a temporary system
Yeah.
before I set up the big one. So I was working on getting one, and then but it was funny. So I'm looking at the 60-gallon drum, and I see corals looking like zeolite, like the coral spur, the zeospur, right?
Yeah, zeospur will kind of, I guess, decreases
that kind of effect. So
zooxanthellae.
everything was looking so pale, and I thought, oh, what am I doing? Like then I see like boiling the hot water heater broken and started boiling in the sun.
Oh, geez. Yeah, and it's not like you had another system you could throw everything in to try to recover them. The only time I've had kind of a major, semi-major crash, luckily I had 3 other systems, so I just immediately pulled everything out that was like the most valuable, rarest, special stuff, and I was surprised actually. Corals can come back from like almost completely white, and sometimes you think like is there even tissue there anymore? But like the tissue will just get really, really thin, and if you really, really take your time and I don't know, are you very careful with light, there's ways to get them back. Do you have any kind of tricks you would say for recovering like compromised corals?
So the main thing I noticed, I dose phosphate every day. So I dose about 0.05 ppm of phosphate on a 0.005. So not even 0.01. So that kind of gives a little bit of phosphate to keep them happy. I feel that little bit of phosphate kind of helps them recover all the time. Like I used to have random frags, die sometimes, like new ones come in. After I started doing this, I mean, I hardly get any. I hardly see any frags dying. Once in a while, everything like it's just solid. Like so, running that and then I run a little bit of carbon. I started doing this probably 2 months ago. I run the BRS ROX carbon. I used to run the ESV carbon before, but I ran out of it. That's the best carbon I feel.
That's a good carbon, yeah.
So I was running that like half an hour every 6 hours,
Okay, so intermittently.
Intermittently, so that the bacteria doesn't die in the canister, So you just have to push water through it every 6 hours. So that's kind of also helping the the speciosus. I kind of noticed. Because one species, like the polyps are all out, and then it started receding, and then it's kind of on the way to death, But this stopped that process, It kind of looks a little happier right now, and it's an experiment I'm running right now with the species. Is like that's the only thing I can figure out yet.
Yeah. That's an interesting approach to carbon too. I don't run it all the time, but I've always been pretty I think carbon actually, even though sometimes they say it'll stay active for a couple weeks or a month or whatever, I think it's really only like quite active in the first day or two, and then it kind of starts. It probably doesn't do nothing, but it doesn't do that much after that point. So I guess by running it, kind of in intervals, you're probably extending that initial lifetime, the range of quite a bit.
And another thing I noticed, so I set up the Apex program to just kick it off once every 6 hours or 30 minutes, but then I realized I didn't set some of the programming right. And it was actually running, it ran for 1 day, and I noticed some of the fresh cut frags just RTN. So it's so dangerous, right? If you just run the whole canister for the whole day. But it's running it for half an hour every 6 hours. It makes, everything is good. The water is clear. The polyps are out most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So the main thing so last year I had this issue where I started pulling in air from outside into the skimmer,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and just things started going south right after that.
Really?
And I couldn't figure out for the longest time what was going on. I did all the ICP tests, nothing shows up. Then finally I thought maybe I just should just try uh, the the NDOC test, the carbon test.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the separate ICP tests that Triton gives.
I don't think I
So
know
I
about
did
that test. It's a carbon
uh,
test?
yeah, it's called NDOC. So
Okay.
it tests a ratio of nitrogen to carbon to
Mm-hmm.
phosphorus.
Okay.
So it shows you the Goldfield ratio in your tank.
Yeah.
How the system is doing that on that side of things.
Yeah.
And my organic carbon was off the charts. So I was supposed to be at 4 or
Mm-hmm.
less, and my system had 12.
Okay, crazy.
Yeah.
Well, that's something to kind of look into for problem solving. And so, how was
Totally.
this getting into the system? This was getting in from the outside
Uh,
air.
So the outside air, so it was pulling in pollen, it was pulling in exhaust gases, all kinds of stuff.
So,
And it doesn't matter where yeah, sorry.
probably a lot of care or thought needs to go into where that actual intake is, but maybe there isn't that much you can
hmm
do. And also, depending on the season, like you say, pollen or something is not going to be around all year, but it's
hmm
going to be a problem certain times a year. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I guess, yeah, I have taken outside source air before, and
Uh-huh.
not noticed a huge difference. But I actually don't have like a CO2 gauge in my garage. Probably something.
hmm
They're not even expensive. I'd be curious to see what I get. But my pH on my tanks is high, so um, you know.
Yeah. And okay, so I was talking to one of my friends about this whole carbon thing, and he said like, so once his wife spilled some gas in the garage, and the skimmer was pulling air from the garage,
Hmm.
and coral started dying right afterwards.
Yeah.
So any organic carbon fumes, like those carbon chains, if it gets pulled into the system, it's going to poison the corals. Like that's what I kind of noticed. So
Hmm.
the tenuises were turning gray and then just dying off. So
Crazy. Yeah.
I couldn't figure out like almost like 4 or 5 months what was going on. It
Hmm.
was just insane. So
Yeah.
I
Cool.
once I cut the
Crazy.
airline, and then I got a heat recovery ventilator for the basement. So
Yeah.
it has a filter and it puts in air, and my pH stabilized, no more issues.
Yeah.
And I just run some carbon just in case.
Yeah. Yes.
So all that bad stuff was pulled out by the ESV carbon I ran. So
Hmm.
so the next NDOC test I did 2 months later, it was already down to 6, and then the subsequent one I was down to 3.8 or something.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Cool. Well, I mean, if that's not an option for some people, I know some will they'll put some kind of filtration on the air intake that's going to the skimmer from
mm,
outside. I'm sure
yes,
there's effective ways of
exactly.
doing that, in the same way that the
Yeah, totally.
HRV does. But yeah, so what do your
Yeah.
systems look like at home now? You have a display and then a frag tank as well?
Uh, yeah, so it all started with the 375-gallon display.
Hmm.
Soon after that, I added a 50-gallon lowboy as a frag tank when the corals were growing. Then that was not enough. Then I added a 150-gallon 13-inch tall 6x4 tank
Hmm.
where I'm growing more stuff, and I'm now running out of space again.
Yeah, yeah. I
So
saw some pictures of the build and stuff. It looks like
yeah,
it looks like a nice setup. But yeah, from the
thank
photos of when you first started putting some mini colonies in there to like a year and a half later, it's looking pretty stocked.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. The hardest thing was like when I had a huge homewrecker colony and a
Hmm.
huge angry bird colony that was peeling off. Oh, in between I had the tropic marine turkey
Mm.
salt issue,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the polyps were fully open, and you can see the skin just peeling off. It was the
Wow.
hardest
Yeah.
thing to see.
Yeah. That is
Yeah.
probably with SPS. That's one of the hardest things to kind of wrap your head around too, is how a coral can be like full color, full polyp extension, and just completely be like shedding off tissue.
Tissues,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well,
yeah.
so what salt did you end up landing on after clearly you
So
moved
I
away from
stopped.
TM?
No, I mean, so I tried Red Sea for a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and then I switched back to German tropic marine
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because I had the best results with the salt. So I knew they probably messed up something in Turkey, and
Yeah.
as soon as I started using German salt again, everything is back to normal.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's what I'm
Actually,
using too. I'm using the German
yeah,
Pro
yeah.
Reef, and yeah, I'm about 2 months into it, and things look good. So,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah, I've been using it since 2010, so
Hmm.
never had an issue until this one. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I guess like, do you like you don't sell coral as like a full-time job? This is kind of a bonus for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The year-end
Yeah.
bonus, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was doing it as a hobby for almost 15, 16 years, and I thought, I mean, I can grow these things well, so as well have a side business and see how it goes.
Hmm.
So that's when I started trying to make it into a business.
Yeah,
So
yeah. It's kind of
yeah.
like once you get to a certain point and you have, especially some corals with value, it's kind of inevitable
Mhm.
that you're going to probably sell some, you know.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
a nice benefit to the hobby. Sometimes I think of, it's like there's people that collect things, like say you collect coins or stamps or
Hmm.
something that's just that thing just exists and it doesn't, you just, hey, look at this. But we collect something that reproduces more of itself and it's quite valuable. So
I
it's
know, totally.
kind of a cool hobby as far as collection goes when it comes to the financial side.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And the coolest thing was that, like, so I had want some of my torch coral spawn, and then I ended up getting this one head survived somehow.
Hmm.
It was stuck on the gravel, and it looks nothing like any of the other torches in my
Cool.
system. It's kind of like it's just unbelievable, like all the things you end up with.
Yeah,
So
that's kind of I
yeah,
think the new frontier of reefing is kind of seeing what kind of morphs we can get out of breeding if we can get,
hmm
different corals to
hmm
mingle. But I think the torches especially, like if you have a mass spawn where all of your torches spawn. I've heard of
yeah,
people, I think Farmer Ty was
yeah,
telling me that too. They had quite a few
uh-huh.
spawn in their system and he's like, I
Yeah.
didn't buy that. I don't know what that is.
I know exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Yeah, I'll send you a video of that one. It just looks like totally out of place. Doesn't
Hmm.
belong anywhere. It's
Hmm.
kind of yeah,
Cool. Is it really nice? Like, would you say it's going to
yeah.
be? Yeah.
It looks spectacular. Just a holy grail with fat tips. Like the tips look like double the size of a normal torch.
Hmm. Yeah.
With the AST type of tips.
Yeah. Cool.
And
Yeah.
then kind of orangish filaments.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure
Yeah.
like the parents are probably good looking, so the chances are that their offspring will will be good looking too.
Exactly.
So, is a lot of what
Yeah.
you culture and grow, yeah, like do you like bring in any wild colonies or maricultured stuff and grow it out, or is a lot of your collection like aquacultured?
It's all aquaculture, so I grow everything from 3/4 to 1 inch frags.
Yeah.
It's like people like Farmer TY or
Hmm.
Shane,
Yeah.
um, Pirates, like
Yeah.
all the collectors. I just get the frags from
Yeah.
them, and Racing Reefs, who else? Um, TCK.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are like some of the people I just get the frags from and then start growing from there.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, it's that
And
investment. Hey, it's like starting. Sometimes it's going to be a year or sometimes more
mm,
before it's.
hmm
Like I know for me, like I don't cut
hmm
anything until I consider it to be a sustainable colony size, where you
exactly.
kind of get it to that point where you can make a frag or two here or there, and
Uh-huh.
by the next time you need
hmm
one, you've got another
hmm
frag grown. But if you just keep
I
cutting
know.
a little inch and a half every time there's a new branch, you need it to get to that exponential point.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's why, like, so I got my 3/4 inch hunks rainbow, and it was sitting in my system for almost 3.5 years. I didn't touch it for 3.5 years, and it became a nice, beautiful colony. Then finally, I just made a few frags just like last month.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Nice.
there's no point in cutting until it becomes a colony, as you said.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Totally. And
Yeah.
and that's like, yeah, for me as a buyer too, that's kind of what I
hmm
trust the most is a multi-generational,
hmm
healthy coral that's gone through the testing process. Are you sort of mainly SPS focused, or I guess you've got torches. You kind of do some other LPS too.
Torches, like, so I ended up getting the torches just to hedge the SPS. I know torches are much more hardier than the SPS. And especially when the tropic marine issue hit, the torches didn't flinch at all. They were
Oh,
like
really?
as if nothing happened.
That's good. Yeah.
And yeah, even with the carbon issue, the torches just grew as if everything is normal. So it kind of helped. Like I didn't lose everything. Like I just lost all the tenuouses I had, but all the other SPS was kind of okay. So yeah, I grow the torches as well now because all of them are growing nice and big, and yeah, but main focus is SPS, so I keep them happy. Yeah.
As far as torches, like I kind of feel like they can take quite a bit of par, or at least certain varieties can. Like, how do you treat them in terms of placement compared to like a tenuous or something like that?
Right now, like the torches are sitting in my SPS system. So it is getting between 375 to 450 par in the grow out, and the torches seems to be fine taking that par along with the SPS. So I don't keep them separately from the SPS. It's all in one system.
You kind of just treat them the same way, maybe a little less flow if it works out that way.
Yeah, a little less flow. Exactly.
Yeah, because I was over at Ray Pirates Reef Place in Miami back early November. And, he's got his holy grails, and they're like just placed like any of the SPS, and the color is so bright on them. And I'm just like, I think I probably need to ramp up the lights on my torches because.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, I think specifically torches of any of the Euphoria, I think they can take more light than, hammers and frog spawns and things like that.
And probably the issue back in the day was that we are not providing all the other trace elements, right? So especially like fluoride at 1.31 probably, helps those torches take up more par, like some of the trace elements and the nutrients probably helping them.
Yeah, maybe, it's part of kind of what helps them synthesize their kind of UV protection or whatever kind of, do you think like the higher par actually makes them grow faster, or is it more of a coloration thing?
Both. Like one of those torches I got back in 2021, it probably got 100 heads on it already.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just massive. Wow. Like it grew from 2 heads.
Yeah. Wow. Nice. Yeah. Again, it can be lucrative when you figure out how to grow corals fast. Yeah.
The thing is that, so don't get any direct flow on it, I kind of understood. So I put one jabber right next behind the torch, and it's heading to the surface, and it's doing the sine wave, like on and off pulsing flow. And the torch is sitting right in front of it, and it's still fully open.
Yeah.
And the flow is the main thing. I feel like they need to get the right flow, and they are happy.
Yeah, something I've seen when I saw some torches with the best polyp extension I've ever seen on a torch was the guy was telling me that he kind of gets the flow. I mean, he has taller stalks on those colonies, but he gets the flow so it kind of comes up underneath the polyp as opposed to over it or into the side of it. And if you kind of come up under it, I think it's probably the healthiest kind of way for it to get flow around it too.
Under, right.
Yeah.
Oh, makes sense actually.
Yeah. So I guess we could talk about trace elements a little bit. Are you doing regular ICPs? Are you doing any kind of trace kind of program?
So I'm on the Moonshiner. So I do the Oshiamo MS test. I have been doing every month religiously for the last 6 to 7 months, and I have been like averaging the daily monthly doses into dosing pumps. So I'm kind of able to maintain all the elements at the optimum level, like without doing a monthly correction in the last month.
Cool.
So I kind of have achieved what the system needs. So I have cut down the monthly ICP to once in 2 months now, and trying to see how things are going.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting if you kind of get that dialed in, like your rate of consumption for the various trace, like you could essentially get it to a point where Yeah, like I think every 2 months, I probably wouldn't be more comfortable with less than that necessarily if
Mm-hmm.
you continually add them,
Yeah.
because just the fact that every system's always changing and going in some direction or another,
Mm-hmm.
eventually something's going to get elevated, I guess. But I mean, you're
Mm-hmm.
probably gravitating towards the side of slightly underdoing it than slightly overdoing it, I'm guessing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'm overdoing is iron, but still I'm within the range that they
yeah,
want.
yeah.
So, but otherwise, I know like with running carbon and I've been running some ozone in between just to test it out.
Hmm.
And those things deplete iron so fast. So I just give the system a little bit more iron than needed.
Yeah.
Just sometimes that's
Yeah.
all. Yeah.
Yeah, iron seems to be one of those things that like you can dose it one day and test for it the next and it'll be gone. Like it's
It's gone,
so
right?
readily used up.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how much it takes to reach a saturation point, but I also
Mm-hmm.
think the iron products that are on the market as far as trace wise, like I don't know if they're all created equal. Just sort of
Mm-hmm.
talking to some experts about it, there's different ways of creating an iron supplement. I would imagine the Moonshiners one is good, and I would definitely
Mm-hmm.
recommend the Captivate
Right.
Aquaculture one as well. But
Uh,
some of the other ones, I'm not going to say any names. I'm going to
yeah, yeah,
say
yeah.
be a little bit wary of
I
it and
know.
talk to an expert about it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
What else
Yeah,
do you
yeah.
find is depleted kind of the most and the fastest? Like, what do you kind of add the most of?
Manganese seems
Hmm.
to be one that was depleting, and I'm dosing it pretty. I mean, a good amount in it now. It seems to stabilize.
Hmm.
Then nickel was
Yeah.
another thing. Zinc was always depleting fast, and once I dialed in the dosage, the daily dosage, so instead of monthly, I'm just doing daily zinc dosage, and
Hmm.
it's staying at 2.5 or 3.
Hmm.
Almost in range with what it should be. And I think zinc plays a major role in the colors and the health of the corals, like
Yeah.
especially on the tenuous to get those golden polyps. I mean, I feel once I had the zinc dialed in, maybe the manganese and fluoride helped with I think it helps with the encrustation on the base.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, like most of the 4 by 4 inch tiles are like fully covered in most of my corals. It is just amazing. Like I never could get that kind of base growth before, and now
Hmm.
even the tenuouses are getting covered in the base. Like the full tile is getting covered. So
Yeah.
that is pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah, I noticed fluoride was something I paid a little more attention to in the last few months over the
Mm-hmm.
past few ICPs, and I can say the
Mm-hmm.
tips of any blue tip tenuous are vibrantly way more blue than they were.
Oh, totally!
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
unbelievably, yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah. And I
yeah,
think the other thing, fluoride actually will give you like stronger skeleton growth, so your corals will
yeah.
actually precipitate like their skeletons in a like harder form. So, because I think
Mm-hmm.
that's always like, I mean, cutting any wild coral, especially say Australia, like their skeletons are hard to cut. Like,
Oh
those
yeah,
wild corals,
yeah.
and it makes you
Mm-hmm.
realize it's like when if you're fragging your corals and they're not that hard to cut, it's like something's going. Like, yeah, they're growing, but maybe they're not, as robust for whatever reason as they would be in the wild. So, I think these little things are
Mm-hmm.
kind of contributing to probably better growth and overall just healthier corals, right?
Totally.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And the daily elements for sure, I feel like once you maintain those daily elements, the six elements, cobalt, iron, um, iodine, and all, even iodine, even if mine goes below 40, I can see the difference, with iodine.
hmm,
So I try to bump it up all the way to 80 or 90, and then I can see the difference.
yeah,
Even potassium going below 390, I can see the difference, like the
yeah,
coloration on some of the corals.
hmm,
Um, yeah, and even like getting the magnesium and calcium at level and not one depleting and the other going up and going down there.
yeah,
I mean, once those I'm able to maintain now. I didn't pay much attention to those when I was paying attention to all these other elements here.
Yeah, but it's
And
that ionic
yeah,
balance I think you're talking about, right? It's
exactly. The
yeah,
ionic balance.
all of
Yeah.
these things kind of support each other, and there's the relationship of calcium and magnesium, and strontium's kind of part of that equation as
Yeah,
well.
sodium.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I wonder with strontium too if it's kind of because it's a similar building block to magnesium, like do corals fully actually require it, or are they just using it in place of magnesium? Because it's a similar
Oh, yeah.
ion. It's like okay,
True.
sure, like I'll use this. It'll do the same job. So, but some people
Yeah.
swear that elevate or keeping strontium in natural seawater range is important.
It's
So,
beneficial.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm daily dosing strontium as well.
yeah,
So yeah, just so that I don't have to do that monthly correction. I have noticed if I do some monthly corrections, some of the corals just get wiped out the next day. So
yeah.
I just try to avoid those corrections with all means possible.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
these elements that you add that you've calculated, are you how often are you adding them? Because you said monthly
Everything
correct.
goes in daily.
Daily,
It's
yeah.
all hooked
Yeah.
up to dosers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything is hooked up to.
And is it
Uh,
do you mix some of them together in an RO solution, or do you add them like straight?
Straight from the bottle. It's all
Yeah.
hooked up to Red Sea
Okay.
dosers, and it just keeps dosing every day. Like one dose every day.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems to
Yeah.
be kind of, I think, what gives the Moonshiner and some of the more trace element kind of based method systems their success is the daily dosage because of, like we were talking about, some of those elements that get used up faster. Yeah, for me actually I noticed chrome is one that gets used pretty fast.
Oh, chromium.
Yeah.
Oh, with chromium, I have to say something. So I have noticed super elevated chromium in my system for months. I was not even dosing chromium,
Yeah.
and I'm looking everywhere. I couldn't find anything. Then finally, under one zoo colony, I see my stainless steel tong lying there, and it was completely like
Oh no.
rotten,
Yeah,
and
not so
yeah.
stainless, are they? Yeah, crazy.
So yeah,
Yeah, I had
and
a friend of mine was starting to lose tenuous, and he sent in tenuous and
uh-huh.
some other corals not looking so good, and he sent in an ICP, and he had really high tin, and it turned
Oh,
out that he had like one of those like little scalpel razor blades had dropped in his sump, and it was like fully
oh,
rusted out. So
oh wow.
I think as far some people kind of go like, oh, ICPs aren't necessary, but it's like,
Mm,
even if you're not going to look at trace elements and do this kind of fine
mm-hmm,
detailed kind of moonshiner type stuff, like still do
mm-hmm,
one like once or twice a year just to make sure there isn't some weird contaminant, like because tin is like a highly
mm-hmm.
toxic metal to corals at
Yeah.
once it gets to a pretty low level. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Totally. It's almost like a life insurance policy, just pay the premium every month or two.
Yeah, totally.
And,
And
yeah,
like, I mean, not saying like everybody has to. Like some people reef
yeah.
in a different way than us, where it's a little more kind of they just want to enjoy a tank and it's not super hands on. But I don't think those kind of people are listening to these podcasts. I think you know what I mean. Like this podcast is going to be a bit more for the
Mhm.
stickheads and people that really want to tweak their systems. So yeah.
And I also felt like adapting to change is the main thing. And people are so set to their old ways of thinking, and just have to reinvent yourself every few years. I feel,
Hmm.
like I was so much into low nutrient system back in the day, and it took me like for some time to get adjusted to, oh, it's okay to have high phosphate, it's also okay to have high nitrates.
Hmm.
And I just started dosing nitrates and phosphates, and I see the difference. But
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And I feel like sometimes, and I've gone through this with other aspects of my life too, is sometimes making a
Mhm,
change, it isn't
mhm,
always better right away. Like you're not
mhm,
instantly going to be like, say you're like, okay, I'm going to start running my system with elevated nutrients. You're not going to be a
mhm,
master of the best way to achieve that right away.
mhm.
You
Exactly.
yeah. So, actually,
Yeah.
that's actually a good segue into feeding and nutrient and how you achieve your nutrients. So,
Mhm.
I guess my first question would be, I know you add phosphates, but do you add nitrates in a supplement form, or you do nitrates
Yes,
in it? Yeah.
sodium nitrate, I dose it. My system takes about 1.5 ppm every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to provide that with sodium nitrate.
Okay.
Um, and I mean, I've been keeping my system between 15 and 20 nitrates for the longest time.
Okay.
And I don't really know whether it really benefits in any way. So I'm trying to bring it down to like probably 5 or so,
Mm-hmm.
where it should more natural and still keep the maintain it at that level and see, whether it make any difference, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I've experimented with it lately a little bit because
Hmm.
I was kind of thinking, like, I'm thinking about this whole organic nitrates versus inorganic nitrates
Hmm.
thing. Really, actually, after talking to Alan on this podcast, it got me really
Yeah.
kind of going like,
Yeah.
well, if putting a nitrate product in your system is the kind of end process of the nitrification process,
Exactly.
like, is it actually beneficial to corals in that form? Like, so I'm going to do I might do a little video on it or something like that. I'm going to talk to some other experts and kind of see what I kind of come up with. But I feel like the best way for you to have a nitrate level is via, feeding and fish poop and
Feeding.
that
True.
process. Because that end product, maybe it has more benefit to like algae and things that you actually don't want to be feeding nutrients to. And
True.
the corals can't really just take in those direct nitrates. But I don't know, whatever makes you sleep at night, I guess, if your corals look good. But I was going to say, I let my nitrates drop to near zero from just not adding any, nitrate product. And I didn't notice anything get pale or lighter. And my theory is that, my nutrients in and nutrients out is at a point where there isn't zero nitrates. Like, it'll test sometimes two, sometimes on I'll get a zero reading, but nothing's gotten pale or light. Because I'm feeding tons of frozen food every day,
Oh, wow.
So I wonder, I mean, I would rather not be at zero. I'd rather be sitting at 10 or something like that, but I'd rather achieve that via feeding than adding a product. But what are you feeding as far as coral food and fish food and whatnot?
So I feed rods food twice a day sometimes.
Yeah.
Or once a day mostly. So big chunks of it just goes in. And then so Alan and me, we have been talking about his way of doing things with the mix, and I have been doing that for the last 3 months as well, but not exactly the same products.
Yeah.
But I mix all those up with the zeovit products, and the bacteria.
Yeah.
And then feed the whole system twice a week as well. But I don't provide any of the nitrate and phosphate rich foods, so I don't get a spike on those with my feeding. So it's mostly benipets, some aquaforest food or SPS food, then zeozim, and with the bacteria, and mix it up and keep it for 6 hours and then pour it in.
Yeah, because I think if you're going to be adding bacteria to the system, it makes sense to add it with the food if it's going to kind of help it become more bioavailable. And I guess that zeozyme is kind of doing something to kind of break it down into a little, like more broken down form in some kind of way. But so you've been doing the concoction for about 3 months, you said, and it's
exactly. When he started, he bought this up with me, and I made whatever I can with everything I had, and then kind of tried to mimic the same thing. And I also feed my system acro power, so I put some acro power in there as well. And then just I've been feeding, and I see awesome response to tenuouses.
Yeah.
I see some unbelievable colors in most of my tenuous, like those golden polyps. I used to have that back in the day before the salt issue.
Yeah.
It's all back again. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I think I know what you're talking about, the tenuous that kind of have that almost that flame kind of tone to the bottom of the polyp or whatever.
Oh,
yeah. So that's a refined thing that's kind of comes down to some of this tweaking, I think, when it comes to the trace and the feeding. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so with nitrates and phosphates, I also thought of a need for adding some carbon into the system. So I've been carbon dosing a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and I see positive effects from that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm thinking my system is a little carbon limited right now because I'm dosing nitrates and phosphates. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, while I'm dosing all three, like the response from the coral is good. Like I see new shoots on some of the dormant tenuouses.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's somehow helping them grow as well.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I guess kind of one of my concerns with carbon dosing recently and, having thought a lot more about bacteria over the last, I don't know, couple years, I'm kind of concerned that carbon dosing
Mm,
might feed some of the bad strains of bacteria in the tank because you can't
mm,
really pick and choose which ones you want it to
mm,
support. So,
mhm.
yeah, like have you experienced the kind of darkening tissue issue on any of your corals? I've sort of gone back and forth with a couple people on it. Like sometimes
Um,
the strawberry shortcake's kind of a type that might do it, or confetti.
because of carbon dosing, you mean,
Well, no, I
or
mean the theory
general?
is that it's a bacterial issue with
Oh,
some corals, and some people I've talked to have had good success with hitting the whole system with bacteria.
uh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to have that issue with some tenuouses and speciosa, for example.
Hmm.
It just becomes gray and dark and then just die off. And
Yeah, and the
I
polyps kind of
mean,
smooth over, like they kind of almost just like kind of disappear into this like smooth
oh,
tissue in the lower base. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And I have noticed after I'm feeding all these things, it's kind of helping them. Even with the speciosa, I see that special feeding tentacle come out, the long ones
Yeah.
that you hardly see, like
Yeah, it would usually be
all
out
of
at
those
night.
tentacles come.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
those come out so nicely with the feeding.
Yeah, and I think
Uh,
that's kind of supporting the idea of we're kind of doing a probiotic approach to the corals. We're
mhm,
adding bacteria like by doing this
mhm,
concoction, or even just by adding
mhm.
bacteria to the tank.
Oh, yeah,
You're
yeah.
supporting that microbiome of the coral, which
Mhm,
I guess gives it a better chance of not being overtaken by some of these
mhm,
bad
mhm,
bacterias that are,
mhm.
inevitably like always going to be kicking around. you know? Yeah.
Yeah, and my reasoning to add the carbon to the whole system is, so we are feeding only twice a week, right?
Hmm.
So if I'm providing the carbon source throughout the day as well, it's kind of sustaining the growth of the good bacteria.
Hmm.
It's help them live longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of feeding all that food and then just dying off. So I'm hoping that's what is working, but I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, it's just a theory.
So what are you
Yeah.
using for a carbon source?
So it is 60% vinegar and 40% vodka
Okay, interesting.
uh,
So
mixed
both.
up.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, just
And
to
I
kind
don't know,
of
you.
give a different variety of carbon sources, essentially. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like two
Yeah.
different carbon sources. And I don't know whether you know Thomas Baker from Coral Frags.
No, I don't think so.
I've been
No.
talking to him. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He's in Michigan, so I'm my friend for like probably 10, 15 years, and
Yeah.
he was doing the same thing. So I thought like I'll give it a shot and see whether
Hmm.
it helps with things. And it seems to like then I mean next couple of after a few days I could see um like for the RRC Mardi Gras frag was sitting without any new growth.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden it's getting like shoots at the base, like five or six of them
Hmm.
at the
Okay.
same time.
Yeah. Crazy.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I know
So
a couple other people I've talked to recently have mentioned kind of shifting back to doing some carbon dosing. Like I know Abe Coral Euphoria put out a video, and I'll put a link to it in this.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
but he did a video where he started carbon dosing again and kind of had put it off, I guess, off his radar for quite a
mhm,
while, and then it kind of solved some of his
mhm,
problems. And then, yeah, a couple people have kind of gone back on that. So I wonder if,
mhm,
it's kind of funny because we kind of have these like fads kind of in the hobby where, people
mhm,
kind of go like start paying more attention to, I don't know, like I feel like
mhm,
maybe we're talking about adding bacteria to our tanks more again than we were
mhm,
a few years back because I didn't add any bacteria to my tank for like years. And then I think
mhm,
what I started having was some bacterial issues. And my kind
mhm,
of the things I started looking to was antibiotics, and I was just like, I
mhm,
don't want to hit the whole system with antibiotics. I have before,
mhm,
but
mhm,
like I say, if we can establish a better biomic kind of profile for the tank with adding bacteria and adding the carbon sources, like you say, then maybe that's kind of the better way to look at it, And
Totally.
maybe
And
also maybe maybe the whole on the wholesaler side or the importer side, that's where some of the antibiotics can be used. You know what I mean?
right.
Because then they're not bringing anything in, like any foreign bacteria in from the ocean that's going to get into our systems. I don't mind the idea
Yeah,
of my wholesaler hitting their systems with Cipro or something.
exactly,
You know?
exactly. Yeah, yeah. That's why I'm thinking of creating a separate tiny system
Hmm.
just to experiment with some imported pieces. I've never done that before.
Hmm.
I have all the antibiotics, like, so maybe like see what makes them completely healthy. I just want to do an experiment like that and see,
Yeah.
where it goes. But yeah.
Yeah, I've got a smaller system I think I'm going to turn into like essentially like a hospital tank, like not a quarantine tank,
Mm-hmm.
but a tank that I can,
Mm-hmm.
run some
Mm-hmm.
medications in. Like I had some Zoa colonies that had those kind of purple clove polyps on them, and you can knock
Mm-hmm.
those out with like a very low dose of fenbendazole. But I
Yeah.
prefer to not put it in the whole tank. So
Mm-hmm.
if you just have this like smaller system, you can just kind of put a medication in, and then it's not
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
huge system. It's like, probably 35 gallons of total water. I can just
Yeah.
swap that water when I do a water change out of one of my big
Exactly.
systems. So it really has no
Totally.
cost in terms of, upkeep or whatever.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah.
was thinking the exact same thing with my small system, just a water change in the display.
Hmm.
I can wipe out the whole water in the in
Yeah,
the
and I
small
mean the
one.
beauty of it too
So
is then it's the same water as your other corals have, so you can literally just
exactly.
drop something right in there. It's not like,
Hmm.
some totally
Hmm.
different set of
Hmm.
parameters. Yeah, totally.
And
Yeah.
even they just run a pump to just pump in like 1 gallon every day into that system,
Hmm.
The
Yeah,
yeah,
totally.
yeah.
Could automate it for
Mm.
sure. Yeah. Is there any other product you would say you've kind of seen any big benefit from that you've started using?
So my all my tenuouses look super amazing when I was using Red Sea ABCD,
Hmm.
based on SBB method. Like that's what I shifted to from my low nutrient system like 4 years ago,
Hmm.
and I was on SBB method for a while, and those products seem to bring out the color so well.
Hmm.
So I still, for my iodine, I use this, the Red Sea A for that,
Hmm.
and then I also use a Red Sea D for the bioactive stuff. So
Hmm.
those two products kind of help with some extra elements that are not in moonshiners, I feel.
Yeah, that's interesting that you're kind of doing that on top of Moonshiners, because I guess you would kind of say that maybe that system, because it is kind of a trace supplement system,
Mm-hmm.
is kind of giving you a baseline, like a
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
baseline level.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
then your kind of Moonshiners is kind of everything on top of that. Like, I guess for me, I'm doing something similar because I use basically the fauna marin baling system, and they have trace that
Mm.
you put in the calcium and
All right.
alkalinity. So
Oh
that to
yeah,
me is kind
yeah.
of like my base point, and then the changes I
Mm-hmm.
make are kind of a bonus on top of that. Because yeah, you got to
Yeah,
think like
yeah.
if you're not adding that stuff all the time,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, I guess it does it get. Are you doing like a 2-3 part dosing as your what's your major element kind of? Um,
Oh, so the major 90% of everything is given by calcium reactor,
mhm.
and then the peak loading is done by two part.
Yeah,
So the calcium reactor stays stable by just adjusting my two part. So
yeah,
and the pH stays higher, about 8.3 as well. We're just doing this.
yeah.
Magnesium, I just do the BRS, magnesium chloride, magnesium sulfide mix,
Hmm.
and feed that as well.
Okay.
Brightwell strontium, um, Brightwell potassium. So
Yeah.
those are also dosed daily.
Okay. Is
Um,
the Red Sea, the 4 part or whatever, is that added to
mhm.
your dose to your 2 part, or is it added on its own?
Separate dosing pumps for
Okay.
Red Sea ABCD. I just have it hooked up and just feed a little bit of it.
So how many dosing pumps are hooked up to your tank?
I got 22 heads
Wow,
right now.
crazy. Actually,
Yeah.
so you said you use some of the Red Sea dose. I actually have quite a few of those as well, but I've had a problem with with mine. There's two problems, and one of them really pisses me off. And I don't know if maybe you can weigh in on this. I should probably email Red Sea. So I have my alkalinity is set in for 24 doses a day between 10 a.m. and like 11:30 p.m. kind of thing, right? So I don't really, there's like 10 hours out of the day or 11 hours out of the day I don't dose alkalinity for my two-part. It's just to kind of part of it is because I want the alkalinity to be dosed during the hours where the corals are growing the most, so I get less of a alkalinity swing. But sometimes the doses per day changes from 24 to 3 without me having touched anything on the app. Has that ever happened for you?
Oh, wow. So the thing is that, okay, so I use DOS for two-part, like all the major elements I dose using the DOS because I already had like 4-5 DOS in my system,
Yeah,
before
so
I got
Apex dose. Yeah.
The Apex dose you can customize to just do it the daytime or whenever you want, right?
Yeah.
So the DOS provides, so exactly. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm providing the two-part before sunset. I mean, when it is dark, that's the only time I provide two-part to get the pH stable.
Okay, yeah. So you're kind of doing the opposite of me, actually, because I'm actually dosing the two-part during the more peak hours, or the hours that the lights are on.
Peak hours.
But I dose my opposite thing to you is that I do calc at night. So I'm actually so I do calcium reactor and two-part. So, and I would say
and calc.
Yeah, and I would say my dosing is made up 50-50 of the the calc is kind of on top of everything, but I'd say the dosing and the calcium reactor are about 50-50. So I feel the most confident with that because if one has an issue, the other one's going to kind of at least hold up half of the job,
Totally.
Yeah.
So it is pretty cool. Like, so when I went on vacation once, my calcium reactor clogged up and I could see the things dropping in my Trident, then I just bumped up my two-part just to be safe, and it just worked out so perfectly.
Yeah. Probably took a little bit of just like tweaking. You set the test to, if you're using Trident, I guess you set it to 8 a day or 12 a day instead of whatever, 4. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I actually wish you could put it to just twice a day. I don't really think I need the alkalinity tested at 6 a.m.
4 times a day, right?
Yeah.
I know. 4 times, and I ended up getting the knockoff version of the those testing chemicals.
Yeah,
the agents.
ABC.
Sorry, the agents.
Yeah.
Oh, those are perfect. Like, I can just dial it into the system parameters, and it just maintains those.
Yeah, awesome. I actually have been meaning to order some of the mix it yourself version of that he sells, where it's I guess you get the dry product and you mix it with I think it's specifically it's supposed to be distilled water, which I don't know what the real difference between reverse osmosis and distilled. It must have some different it's some different filtration.
There could be silicates, right?
Yeah.
The reverse osmosis. So that's the only difference I can think of. But
maybe distilled is just, I don't know. Yeah, it was a fact check episode. But that's interesting. But they are. I agree. They're very accurate as far as like I switched over from maybe 2 bottles ago or 2 Trident changes ago, and I did a calibration when I first changed. And I've just been refilling the bottles, and I'll test it against Salifert, and it's still just continuing to be
on.
So the only thing now is I don't just go on the Trident telling me when to refill the bottles. I actually have, like, sometimes a bottle will completely run out, and I'll be like, oh crap, like I let that run out, like there's a problem. But that's fine. I mean, they can handle having that happen.
Hey. Yeah, you can just fill it up anytime and reset Trident, right? And you are all good to go.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So you're using Tridents, obviously. How often do you test manually, like kind of as far as like trusting your Trident versus, like do you test manually?
So if I see things drop like out of range, I just test that night to see whether it's accurate or not. If things are staying steady and stable, I do once a week. I test for calcium, magnesium, and alkalinity every week.
Okay. I think that's fair. I mean, and also like it's more like if you see a trend that is a bit odd, like something's just I don't know, like Yeah, like if I really see, say, calcium dropping over the course of 3 or 4 days and nothing has really
Mm-hmm.
changed, then I might do
Mm-hmm.
a test because the
Mm-hmm.
calcium magnesium, I feel like are a little less consistent than the alkalinity component.
Yes, I feel the same because I see like magnesium dropping and calcium going up. So the inverse thing, like I haven't changed anything in the last 3 4 days. So
Hmm.
I need to do a test and see what's going on. But
Yeah,
it's kind of that thing.
yeah, I might
It's
be
not
getting,
accurate, right?
yeah, the
Yeah.
reagent might be a little low. Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, definitely a
Yeah.
good tool, especially when you're on vacation, like you say.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so what's your kind of lighting setup look like? Are you running radions? What's your preference?
So I mean, I have all ORPEC, so
Okay.
Atlantic. I have Atlantic V4 on my on my display, and the icons on my grow out that I started 2 years ago. So I got like 4 fixtures over the display and 4 fixtures over the grow out, and then I got
Hmm.
the bars, the blue bars,
Yeah.
blue plus bars
Yeah.
all
Yeah. I've
across.
got quite a few of
So
those bars too. Yeah.
yeah,
Good pop for sure.
those those give
So
full coverage.
yeah, so the Atlantics are pretty, like you can crank a ton of par out of those things, hey?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
My home worker, so I didn't have a power meter for the longest time
Hmm.
until I got a great deal on it, like on BRS. I
I'm
just
kind of at that point
snatched
too.
one
I'll
off.
probably get one if it's cheap, but I don't, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, they have the open box running, so you just put your email address in there. When
Mm,
it's available, you'll get mail and
okay.
just grab it immediately.
Cool. Yeah.
And and I mean, my home worker was sitting at 650 power,
Wow.
650 to 700 power. I couldn't believe it. So it was getting a lot of power with all the bars and the
Hmm.
fixture.
Yeah. Crazy. Okay.
Yeah.
So like what would you say your kind of average par is? What do you kind of
Um,
shoot for, like as a consistency?
so I didn't touch the display. I mean, the corals were super happy with the par, so I left it the way it is. But my grow out is only 13 inches deep, so
Hmm.
I keep the par not more than 475. So
Hmm.
it's between 375 and 475 in the grow out,
Okay. Yeah.
and because of the shallow depth of the tank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there must be
Yeah.
some outer edges and stuff where you can put, that's like a lower par, but you'd say most of the tank is
Yeah.
in that 375.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Okay.
at the edge, I got the other bars, to compensate for the drop in power. So,
Okay.
and I ran the power meter throughout the tank, and it was pretty consistent. Like
Okay.
at the edge of the tank itself, I was getting 300 power
Okay.
almost. So,
Cool. So
yeah,
there's
that's
nowhere to hide then.
that's the thing with the power meter. You can go across the tank and adjust the lights so that you get that uniform power.
Hmm.
So it's totally worth buying one.
Yeah.
I felt, yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
actually think there's something to that as well, for you selling coral to people, because people ask me about what par is this best under all the time, and I'm just kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
all my racks are pretty
Mm-hmm.
much in the same range. Like there's a few corals that I kind of like tuck over to the edge, but I'm only putting them over to the edge because I know they can tolerate less par, because I only have so much room. But for the most part, it's like, I've found some of those dragon type, like Cardus type acroporas, like
Mm-hmm.
they can adapt to like higher par range, no problem, over time.
No,
And
totally.
and if you're selling to people and you kind of say like, well, these corals, like they'll ask you, what's this under? What should this be under? It's like these
Mm-hmm.
they pretty much can all take a fair bit of par. Not saying that you shouldn't like still consider acclimatizing corals that you buy, but if like they're coming
Oh
from
yeah.
someone like you,
Mm-hmm.
like very few people are going to have way more par than you have, you know? Oh,
Yeah,
I just lost your video for a second
yeah.
there. Yeah, I think we're
Can
good.
you hear me?
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
it's good. You cut out for a
Uh,
second.
and one thing I noticed, like people say speciosus can't take power,
Hmm.
but one of my nicest pieces sitting under 400 power,
Hmm.
and is doing awesome.
Yeah,
So I don't know what to say,
yeah, yeah.
and and a ton of flow too.
Yeah, I mean, something I would
Yeah,
definitely do for like those wild corals is I would start them quite low and bring them up. But like, you
yeah,
probably got that piece from Shane, I'm guessing. Your
yeah,
speciosa that you
yeah,
have, yeah,
yeah.
um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It was at the low, so it was in 250 to begin with. I slowly moved it up all the way to
Yeah.
400. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, that's good to know. Yeah, and I mean, maybe some of these corals in the wild wouldn't be under that amount of light, but that maybe this is kind of
Mm-hmm.
how we're getting some of the better colors and pigments. That we're kind of pushing things beyond nature in some ways, potentially. Yeah, yeah, totally. Uh,
Right, right. Yeah. And there is still debate on whether this species does grow in deep water or it's more towards the surface.
mhm.
I mean, it's like, yeah, I really don't know. Like, a couple of people say it lives on the surface, so.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I just recorded an episode with Eric from Route 66, who's an
Mm-hmm.
awesome wholesaler, and he said that they
Yes.
they were in Malaysia back in 2016, kind of before any of the coral came out of there, and the guys were on the boat and they were collecting. I guess it was LPS, but he said these
Mm-hmm.
guys went way, way down to collect these LPS. Like he couldn't believe how
Oh,
deep this stuff was coming up from, and they're bringing up
oh,
Lobos
wow.
and torches and things like that. So,
Mm-hmm.
but he didn't
Mm-hmm.
see the SPS collected at that point. So,
Oh, I see. I
yeah.
see.
So I'm not sure. Yeah, it's hard to say.
Uh,
Yeah, we should get some info from someone in Malaysia that can kind of give us a
Malaysia.
little bit of a like reference because
Uh-huh.
you see pictures of say corals in Fiji and you see those like super shallow corals that are like even out in the sun when the tide's low.
Mm-hmm.
But I would
Mm-hmm.
doubt just based on the structure of the skeleton on those speciosa and some of those other Malaysian acropora,
Mm-hmm.
like I would say they're not necessarily going to be out at low tide, but hard to
Mm-hmm. Oh,
say.
yeah, totally.
Yeah, maybe I'll
Right, exactly.
have to go to Malaysia, check for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
totally. I don't know if I asked you. So, as far as what do you feed your fish? Like, I know you were sort of talking about some coral foods and stuff, but do you say it's rods that's kind of your fish food?
Yeah, Rod's
Yeah.
food and yeah, Rod's food, and then I got this one probiotic blend of pellets that I feed when I go on vacation. But I also got it like feeding the fish in the morning because I got some antheas in the display,
Hmm.
and I see like two of them just disappear if I don't feed twice a day. So
Yeah. Yeah. Those anthias with their little
yes.
little stomachs, they're just not able to.
Oh yes, yes,
Yeah, totally.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it gets some pellets as well, but my main food is Rod's food.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, we don't really
Yeah.
have it in Canada, so maybe that's something I need to look into bringing in or something because a lot of people seem to use it. So yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
And he's not too far from here. He lives probably an hour or two from
yeah,
Chicago, so kind of local to me.
yeah.
So
That's
yeah,
handy. Yeah, for sure, especially for frozen foods. Yeah, totally.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Mm.
yeah. Is there any like? Have you ever had like a parameter, like say salinity or like a temperature swing or something that was out of the ordinary that you actually noticed like could potentially have a benefit? Like, what's your thoughts on elevated temperature or things like that?
Um,
Like, essentially
I
increased
feel
metabolism, you know?
yeah. Once like I was doing some cleanup in my sump, and my temperature probe came out of the water,
Hmm.
and the temperature starts to shoot up, and then I mean I find out what was going on, and put the probe back. But that night, I think my torches burned. So with
Yeah,
the elevated
interesting.
temperature.
Yeah, it's a
So,
because I've wondered about that sometimes. Is like sometimes we'll learn something from. I think Adam Battle Corals was telling me about kind of overdosing nickel and thinking like, oh, my corals actually look better than ever with this like nickel that's outside of the the
oh
acceptable
wow,
range. But
yeah.
obviously everything has a maximum point. But I've been thinking about
Mhm.
temperature lately a little bit, and I'm not really
Yeah.
looking to increase growth rates, but like going back to like older style tanks where like
Mhm.
when I used to run metal halides, my tanks would run kind of 80 to 83 was kind of like my
Mhm.
standard. I just couldn't
Ah.
get it any cooler than that
Oh yeah, yeah. I
if I
need to
tried.
say something about that. Yeah, yeah. So I was running my tank 79, 80 degrees
Hmm.
when I didn't have a basement in my old house. So in my new house, I have the whole sump and everything in the basement and display on the first floor.
Hmm.
I am able to run my system at 76,
Hmm.
and everything seems to be happy. Like even when some fishes like I had some fish. I had like 2 or 3 spots of egg on it, and it was like I didn't do any medication. Like the egg just went away.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's because the temperature is low and those things cannot flourish, but it seems to have a positive impact on even the torches, and I feel like they like the lower temperature, I feel.
Yeah, that
in
would make
general.
sense too, especially if
Yeah.
they're a little deeper as far as like where they're collected. It's probably a lot cooler down
Mhm.
there. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because I mean, the risk is like higher temperature, higher metabolism, maybe
Mhm.
some of those bad bacteria strains and things like that have a better chance of taking
Taking
over or being
off.
an issue, or
Yeah.
especially fish disease,
Mhm.
like you say. Yeah. Do you run any
Mhm.
UV, or you were talking about ozone, but
Oh, no. So I stopped ozone like a month or two ago. I did a test for a few months, and the smell, even with like putting carbon, the smell is there.
I hear
So
it's a weird smell.
yeah,
Like,
it's yeah,
yeah.
and it will cause like holes in your lungs. If you breathe it,
Hmm.
it's kind of dangerous as well. So I just stopped using it,
Yeah.
and I s- I even stopped running a UV sterilizer because it's going to kill even the good bacteria, right? So
Yeah. Totally.
so my thinking is like to keep that good bacteria growth steady and going, no UV, and I just feed carbon source to just maintain that good bacteria
Yeah.
in the
Yeah. I like
system,
that.
And
I like that idea for sure.
mhm.
Yeah. And I also think that running UV 24/7 is, it's just another potential failure point in a system too.
Mhm.
Like I have
Mhm.
UVs on my system, and I still haven't decided after a year and a half or whatever that I've been running them,
Mhm.
if they really do anything good for my tanks.
Mhm.
And one thing I've always done if I've ever gone away for a weekend or gone on a vacation is I unplug the UV before I go, because
Oh.
if something happens with that bulb, or
Mhm.
return pumps off and then turns
Mhm.
back on, that bulb could
Mhm.
crack. It's just another thing that, because we
Failure,
have to look
yeah.
at the things that actually have the capability of like crashing the system, not just kind of like
Oh, yeah.
going a little bit sideways. It's like that's actually something
Mhm.
that could be pretty dangerous if
Mhm.
it's not maintained well. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
no, I think I'm for that, and kind of starting to think,
Yeah.
you know, um,
Yeah, I mean, good you asked that question. I just stopped the UV 2 or 3 months ago
mhm.
because I was not seeing any benefits by running it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah,
And maybe
yeah.
there's a rate, I think, because there's a rate that's more for bacteria and there's one that's more for pathogens like fish diseases. So your
Mhm.
rate of flow through it makes a difference. So, something to look
Totally.
into, and I can sort of maybe fact check this when I finally do a fact check episode, is,
Mhm.
are there certain rates for UV that might be better for not wiping out, good strains of bacteria in the water column? you know.
Mhm.
But that
Yeah,
being
right,
said,
right.
I mean, my understanding is a lot of the better bacteria strains in the tank are on the surfaces, anyways. So,
On the surface waters. Oh,
mhm,
I see. Uh-huh.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Actually,
Oh,
that brings me to a question I've kind of asked quite a few people on here: is do you run a lot of? I mean, you have a display, but then you've also got your frag system. What's your thinking on live rock? Like, do you think the more the merrier, or do you think you can get away with like almost no rock?
I have a ton of rocks that I've been collecting in the last 15 years,
Yeah,
and there is no place for it to go. So it ends up in the sump, it ends up in the refugium. It's like I'm overloaded with rocks.
yeah.
So I think it kind of helps with the stability of the system in general.
Hmm.
Even like back in the day in 2008, I got rocks straight from Tonga, so it had some original stuff, like some of those um, sponges on it, like
Hmm.
nice colorful ones, and
Yeah,
it is spread across my display. It's kind of cool, like to see it more natural looking
yeah,
with those live rocks. So I mean, I'm all for live rocks
yeah.
in
Cool.
general.
Yeah. So you're
Yeah,
kind of in the more the merrier camp. Yeah,
yeah,
and that's
yeah.
interesting. Actually, having a lot of sponge growth is going to be good for your silicate levels if you've got silicone or silicates that are getting in.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's funny. Like, so there is one point my silicate dropped below normal range, and I had to dose silicate.
Oh wow. Yeah.
I had to buy this huge bottle of silicates and like make a mix and throw some in.
Yeah, it could be the
Yeah.
sponges apparently
Yeah.
are that's something that they use, I guess, to build their little
Hmm.
spongy bodies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, because I mean,
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
thing like Ray Pirates Reef doesn't run a ton of rock, like a few
Uh-huh.
pieces, and there was another system that was, um, almost like would cycle a system with live rock, but then just
Mm.
didn't just took it out of the sump once the system was full of coral because the coral
Oh.
and the essentially the surfaces are maybe enough to,
Mm-hmm.
support. But like you say, I mean, I've always had a lot of rock in my sumps. Even in tanks that were
Mm-hmm.
display tanks, I've always had rock in the sumps. And I think it does help with the stability, and it's a buffer for, probably, I don't know, probably your
Hello?
nitrates and, oh, yeah, are we good? Yeah, you're cut a little bit choppy.
I think you're cutting off in between, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's better now.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I wonder too if, because you and I are both adding nitrates and phosphates to keep those levels
Mm-hmm.
up, maybe if we had less rock or no rock, um, we wouldn't have to add those.
The only thing I noticed, so when I started my grow out, the 150 gallon, I had no rock in it. It was all completely bare.
Hmm.
But the corals were having a tough time growing. But at the same time, I had the carbon issue at the same time. So
Hmm.
I ended up adding a few pieces of rock in there because some of my friends suggested maybe it needs a few pieces of rock at least in there. So I mean, it really didn't help that much because the main issue was carbon. And once
Hmm.
that was resolved, everything
Yeah.
got back to normal. So I am thinking there is no need for all these rocks in my system since
Yeah.
you're bringing this up, So and
Yeah, the problem
and
is
I
you want to keep
and
that rock alive. So, what are you going to do with it if you start pulling rock out? You kind of need to either just commit to letting it essentially die off as far as the bacteria on it, and just put it under the porch or something. you know.
and the good thing is like a lot of that my rock is Tonga branch, the originals
Mm,
from Tonga. So those are just beautiful, and I get the scape done so because of that with caves and stuff. So
hmm.
I mean, but those big Fiji rocks, I can definitely take it out
Yeah.
and they probably just store it in the garage to make some space.
Yeah,
But
totally.
yeah,
Yeah, that Tonga rock is pretty special. Yeah, I guess if
yeah.
people don't know about it, it's like big, thick, kind of staghorn branches, and I wonder what those corals looked like actually. Like, had they been a coral at some
Oh,
point, were these just massive staghorns? Like,
oh, I have to say the story. So I was in Barrier Reef back in 2015. So I dived down 50 feet down where the staghorns grow.
yeah.
The staghorns grow all the way at the bottom. It is like a forest. It's never ending. You couldn't see the end of that whole
Hmm.
staghorn forest. And the branches are like 3 or 4 inch thick.
Wow, crazy.
Huge branches
Sorry,
all the way from the bottom. So
where did you say this was?
this was in the Barrier Reef in Australia.
Oh, okay, Barrier Reef. Yeah, yeah. Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just insane to see that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
bet. Yeah, I was in Bali. Trying to think now. Was it this year? Yeah, it was earlier this year. And
Uh-huh.
there's an area that just it's all these sort of Formosa type staghorns. It's just like you say. It's
Mhm.
just a
Mhm.
field of it. They all, but yeah, not as thick of branches. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's cool. And yeah, I think
yeah.
it's
That's
definitely a good call to hold on to that original live rock. Like, I probably hoard it a little bit. Like, I've never sold any of the live rock I've ever had, besides a few
hmm
pieces, or given people a few pieces just to seed their systems. But,
hmm
it's just we don't know if we're ever going to have the real stuff again. Most of the rock that comes in is the aquacultured stuff. So,
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Like some of those yellow sponges, some orange sponges, like all kinds of. I have like 3 or 4 different colors of sponges in my system. It's pretty cool.
Hmm.
Like with those,
Cool.
the live rock from Tonga brought in. Yeah,
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's yeah.
but it brings in all the bad stuff too. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
There's always risks. Totally. Yeah. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
let's maybe I do these rapid fire questions. So I'm going to hit you with these and we can
hmm
kind of see how
Yeah.
fast it goes through and then
Sure.
I got a run after that. So, and I know you probably
Okay.
do
Oh,
too. So, okay.
yeah,
So
yeah.
first question is, and you can answer in any kind of way. You can say a scientific name, a trade name, whatever. Just, be
Hmm.
creative if you want.
Hmm.
So, favorite fish.
Um, it's leopard dress. The 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 what is it? The Australian leopard dress,
Yeah.
the orange one. Yeah,
Cool. Are they,
that's my
I don't,
favorite.
are they hard to get feeding? Like, what's your experience with them?
They so they come in. They ship very badly, so they come in like beaten up, and then
Hmm.
they go hiding under the sand. Once they come out, they need the live foods to
Hmm.
establish. But once they cross the 1 week time, they are good to go for
Yeah.
years.
So start on live
Yeah,
foods and then they might start getting used to eating
used to
prepared.
the
Yeah.
frozen food.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
good to know. Cool.
yeah. Mm.
Could you pick what one favorite SPS?
Um, One favorite is the Angry Birds tenuous.
Yeah.
That's my
The Reef
yeah,
USA one?
yeah.
Yeah.
Our USA Angry
Awesome.
Birds.
Cool.
The colors are insane. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. Especially if you get those gold in the polyps too, right? Like you're talking about.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Favorite LPS?
um, Torches.
Yeah.
The My favorite is the CC24K.
Yeah.
Holy Grail. I mean, I started off with two heads of that, and it's like probably 10, 15 heads right now. But
Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe one of your favorites will be the the special one that you grew from
Oh,
a
the new
friend.
one.
Yeah, that could be a
Yeah.
favorite. Cool.
Right.
I don't know how much you keep for softies, but do you have a favorite softie type or specific?
Soft. I just have a bunch of Yuma mushrooms that
Hmm.
just took off and taking over. I mean, those are nice, but I want to get one of those original bounce mushrooms one of these days,
Hmm. Yeah.
and that's one thing I'm looking forward to get at some point.
Yeah, the OG bounce is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Definitely a must-have.
Yeah.
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 So I know you're using Orphec Atlantics. Would you say you have a favorite light product or say favorite source of light?
I mean, my favorite is still the Reflex 12K 400 watts radium bulb.
Yeah. Yeah.
That gave me the best growth. Like things just grew exponentially. In like 1 year, my tank was filled up.
Yeah, crazy. And I
So
mean, the thing with
yeah,
the thing with metal halides too is you just turn them on. They turn on and they turn
yeah.
off. There's no tweaking, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, our effects are great, but I mean, it grows in nice colors, everything. So nothing to complain, but not the same rate of growth, back in the day. That's the
Yeah.
only
Yeah,
thing.
for sure.
Yeah.
If you were to kind of use one product line, say like Tropic Marin or Fauna Marin or Red Sea, to kind of maintain an entire system, like who would you kind of say would be your favorite product line overall? Like if somebody had put a gun to your head and was like, you can only use one product line.
With the colors I got, I will stick with Red Sea actually.
Yeah, yeah. Red Sea has
For
such a vast product line too. Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, even the salt is okay. It's not going to screw you over.
Hmm. Yeah,
So with the issues and stuff, like pretty consistent
yeah.
generally.
They definitely seem to be.
I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I usually ask aquarium controller. Do you have any experience with any controllers other than the Apex?
Apex.
Would you say that's
No,
kind of
that is
your,
the
yeah,
only one. Yeah,
yeah. Okay.
yeah,
What about
always.
wave pump? What do you like for wave pumps?
So I have the MP60s on my display,
Hmm.
but with my grow out, I got a few J-Bow
Hmm.
um, Waymakers, and those seems to be working perfect, great. No issues, nothing,
Hmm.
and like 1/4 the price, and is doing the job. So I probably will switch everything out to
Yeah.
J-Bow, eventually.
Yeah, Leonardo's reef is
Yeah.
100% J-Bow. Like even his dosers and stuff, I think are all J-Bow. So, yeah, I mean, sure, yeah, for the
Oh, and the
price,
dose. Yeah. I
totally.
mean, with the dosers, I won't go without. Yeah,
Yeah,
with the dosers, I won't trust because it
yeah,
won't do its job. But with the pumps, I've been running it for 2 years and I had no issues. So,
yeah. That's good to know.
um, but yeah.
Cool.
Mm.
What is your most despised pest?
Um, I would say the flatworms,
Yeah.
Acropora flatworms. Took such a long time to get rid of. I know Ryan said fenbendazole works,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. We've been kind of
uh,
discussing what potentially an in-tank dose could look like
uh,
without
uh-huh,
affecting.
uh-huh.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
But yeah, the old school
Yeah,
way is
that's
pulling all the colonies out, having everything removable,
dipping.
making sure you get all the eggs, dipping them in intervals,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
yeah,
mm-hmm.
it's no fun for sure. Yeah, I would agree. They're probably the worst
Exactly.
pest. At least things like, acro bugs, like you can treat interceptor
Yeah.
and
Interceptor takes care of everything else, Yeah,
totally,
yeah.
totally.
Mm.
Yeah.
But
Uh,
I know, like one of my friends said, there is this one black flatworm. It's smaller. It's not like the regular flatworm.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is
They're
tiny,
the
half the
new
size.
Acropora eating flatworms. There's an
Oh,
article on
that one.
Reef Builders. Yeah, they're kind of a purple kind
Yeah.
of color. Yeah.
And our platform is nothing compared to that one. That
Oh,
one will destroy a colony in a day or two.
they're way more
I heard.
damaging, and they lay
Yeah.
scattered eggs, and I'm pretty sure this
Mm-hmm.
sort of gestation period is a lot shorter than
Not sure.
the other ones. But
Yeah.
I discovered via quarantine system that these peppermint shrimp that come from Jakarta, the what is it, Lismata queckenthali, those
Mm-hmm.
ones eat the purple flatworms and their eggs. 100% eat them.
Oh, with the new ones. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
The AEW.
So
Yeah.
yeah, because
Okay.
what I did is I
Excellent.
set up this. It's the same tank that's kind of my hospital tank, and I put like
Yeah.
25 of those
Yeah.
guys in there, and I had a
Uh,
colony in the quarantine system that had those purple flatworms, and I put it in there,
uh-huh.
and immediately saw them literally just chowing down on them, like
That's
in no time.
unbelievable.
But I think
That's awesome.
if you had a big
Yeah.
display, I don't know if
Uh-huh.
they would work for you. I think it's like the
Yeah.
concentration of like a lot of numbers in a smaller tank and I wasn't feeding them a ton. I'd feed them every couple days.
Mm-hmm.
So they're probably
Yeah.
really hungry and they're a little more desperate, but they went right for
I
them.
see.
So
Oh, nice.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
so
Oh, great.
good info. Okay, well, the last question is a thought experiment, I guess. If you kind of had the financial means and the sort of situation in your life to do so, would you set up a reef tank like the Polo reef tank, the 14,000 gallon Polo reef? Would you do it? Right? Or if so, what would you do differently?
Um, I would try to like build not such a big tank, probably make it more wider and shallower so that it's more of a shallow reef than a deep reef like that.
Hmm.
Um, and probably grow out all the all the corals available, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. But you would
yeah.
do it. You would have it in your home, just a little
Oh,
different
totally.
dimensions. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, because I mean, we're talking hypothetically, you can hire all the best people you want as well, right? So
Exactly.
you can
Yeah.
still go on vacation. Yeah,
Right.
cool, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Well, Anand, thanks for making this happen. It's tons of good info in this convo, I think. So
Oh, great. Yeah. Nice chatting with you. Yeah, we should
yeah, man.
keep in touch. I still have a lot of questions for you. So
Yeah, totally.
talk to you.
Yeah, turn the tables sometime. But yeah, we can always chat and bounce ideas around for sure, man.
All right.
Cool.
All right. Sounds
Thanks.
good. Yeah.
Okay, well, have a
Thank
good
you.
afternoon. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode with Anand Kaimal from Collectors Corals. Make sure you check out his website at collectorscorals.com, and I will leave links to his other media in the show notes below. And if you have any suggestions for future guests, want to just ask us a question, make a suggestion, make a criticism, whatever you want to say, feel free to reach out at beyondthereefpod@gmail.com. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and leave us a review. And if you're looking for high-quality aquacultured corals in Canada, please check us out at fraggarage.ca. Hope to hear from you soon.